Now call this meeting, Bryan Independent School District meeting to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The time is 6 o'clock. I wish to I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present. I ask that you please turn off the sound on all electronic devices and stand for the pledges. American flag, Fannin Elementary. You are welcome to introduce your students.
Got some little bitties. Okay. Come on up. All the way around. Yeah. Want to introduce yourself? And parents, get wherever you want to take pictures.
My name is Julesa Olande. Camila Grijana.
My name is Iker Sanchez.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Axel Reyes.
My name is Vanessa. My name is Abigail Marquez. My name is Abigail Marquez.
Abigail Marquez. Okay, hold on a minute. Hold on. Let's do yours here.
I'm Valeria Nieto Galvan.
Valeria.
My name is Natana Sanchez. My name is Iris Lara. My name is Yesenia Montañez. Adrian Mendoza.
My name is Emilio Grijalva. My name is Felipe Grijalva.
Ms. Taplett, who are you?
I'm sorry. Oh. I'm Miss Taplett. I'm the principal. And
Miss Elam, assistant principal.
I am Ms. Ortega, a kindergarten teacher.
very good.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. Wait. Yes, we're going to just split. Come on. This way. Up. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
All right, very good.
All right, good evening. We have Crockett students from our student leadership group. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and then we'll say the Texas Pledge. Daniel, you want to start us?
Daniel Londeros. My name is Daniel Londeros. Third grade. My name is Keegan Moraga. In third grade.
Hi, my name is Abraham. I'm in third grade.
Hi, my name is Rosalina Rodriguez, and I am in third grade. Hello, my name is Ava Cervantes, and I am in third grade. Hello, my name is Samari Snapper, and I am in fourth grade.
We got one fourth grader. Nice, awesome. All right, guys, ready?
And tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm Miss Earhart. I'm the principal at Crockett. And then we also have Miss Ramirez, our school counselor, and Miss Stanford, who is our teacher we're going to recognize in just a minute. All right. I'm going to give this to Daniel, you? All right, Texas.
Wait, sorry. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. And now we're going to have some spotlights. First one will be for the elementary teachers of the month. And I will remind everybody that Truist Bank had provided a little extra for those who are being recognized. And Alonso Robles with Truist is here to help with that. Thank you. And we have first teacher is Iris Ortega at Fannin Elementary.
Okay. We have Miss Iris Ortega. Iris.
Okay, this is Iris Ortega, and as you can see, I think all of these people are here for Iris, so she is much loved. All right, much loved. And these first 7 students here are her students in her classroom. So Iris is truly an exceptional bilingual kindergarten teacher at Fannin Elementary, who started the year with 23 little falcons, and she's still smiling. Not only does Iris have a great attitude, Ms. Ortega goes above and beyond in her commitment to ensuring that each one of her students feel loved, valued, engaged, and in their learning. As a bilingual kindergarten teacher, Iris is deeply committed to fostering language development in both English and Spanish, ensuring that her students become fluent in both languages. Her ability to engage her students in meaningful, language-rich activities and create an environment where bilingualism is not only supported but celebrated is unparalleled. Just visit Iris's classroom, and you will find an environment complete with anchors on desks, ceilings, walls, wherever, just to help students become independent bilingual learners. In addition to her passion for bilingual education, Iris is incredibly effective in all of her day-to-day activities. She's very organized, she's always prepared, she sets high expectations, and yet maintains a positive, patient attitude with her students and our staff. Every day, and I mean every day, Iris engages her students in small group instruction and readily adjusts her instruction and strategies the next day if needed in order to fit the unique needs, because she recognizes that every child learns differently, making her an outstanding educator who truly understands how every child learns. Also, not only is Iris successful with her own students, as though she does not have her hands full already, but her classroom is a safe place for other students in kindergarten. Beyond her work as a classroom teacher, Iris takes on many important roles in our school community. She is the devoted team leader in kindergarten. She heads up one of our Leader in Me Action team. She's a huge part of our PTO. She helps organize many of our after-school events and much more, demonstrating her flexibility and willingness to support her colleagues while fostering a positive, collaborative atmosphere. And Iris is also working on a master's degree, by the way. She is truly an irreplaceable member of our school, community, and our district. Congratulations, Iris, for a well-deserved recognition. I think so. Let's go over here. Okay.
Precious. That was a good time.
I want to get by her.
Derek needs to recruit those big kindergartners.
About to knock the whole thing
I
over.
know, I feel like that thing's gonna fall.
It's not all about you, Joel. All right, congratulations again. And we're back to the Crockett Rockets, and we got Ms. Earhart back up.
All right, good evening again. Miss Stanford, come on up. And just so you know, Crockett Elementary turns 75 years old this year, so we have a big birthday coming up. All right, good evening. Tonight we have the pleasure of celebrating Miss Courtney Stanford. She's a kindergarten teacher at Crockett Elementary. In the 3 years that Ms. Stanford has been part of our school family, she has demonstrated unwavering dedication to serve the children and families in ways that meets every family's need. Each day, Ms. Stanford implements in her classroom what she knows works for kiddos, and each day she also strives to learn and understand new and different ways to work with children in her classroom. Her dedication to do what is right for each child in her classroom is tireless, a tireless effort on her part. She has a spirit of perseverance that makes her an asset to our school and to her students. When teaching students in her classroom that have different needs than the majority, Courtney doesn't stop at it's not working. She pushes through to find what works. She asks questions, she seeks to understand, and listens to learn and lead in her classroom. Ms. Stanford, I lost my place. Seeks to understand, listens, and learns and eats outside of the classroom as well. Courtney doesn't just have care and concern for her classroom, but our school as a whole community. Last year, she became part of our student council as an adult leader. She has delivered lessons and worked with students in all grade levels in this capacity. She's also joined our foundations team this year to help take part on the task of serving on our campus community as a whole. In addition to her commitment to our schools, she also is committed to our district. She serves on district committees when needed. She's an up-and-coming leader in our school, in our district, and our community, and a great asset to Crockett Elementary. We are pleased to celebrate Ms. Courtney Stanford as our Teacher of the Month.
Come over here on this lovely.
Oh, you got one more. One more. Don't be shy.
Here goes another one.
Well, anyone else?
So cute.
Thanks, Barbara. Congratulations again. All right, now we're moving to the secondary level, and we have Kimberly Giesenslaw to introduce the teacher that we're recognizing from Stephen F. Austin Middle School.
Barbara, you give new meaning to behind the scenes.
She did just save the day.
She did.
Good evening. I'm excited to introduce to y'all Mr. DeMarcus Lee. There are many qualities you look for in a great teacher. The qualities range from being an excellent communicator, active listener, hard worker that sets high expectations, compassionate, kind, and creates an ideal learning environment. These are just a few qualities that Mr. DeMarcus Lee possesses. It is truly an honor and privilege to have him as a teacher at SFA Middle School. DeMarcus Lee joined Stephen F. Austin Middle School last school year, mid-year, which as you know can be hard and challenging, with our ELA department as an 8th grade intervention teacher. As you can imagine, Mr. Lee was a little anxious, but was beyond willing to make a positive impact on our students in campus. He filled that position and immediately began making great strides with his students, and his students showed amazing growth. This year, in his role as an 8th grade ELA teacher, Mr. Lee has continued to be an outstanding educator in the classroom who is passionate about fostering a love of learning in all students. He is able to build positive relationships with students, which encourages and motivates them to perform to their fullest capacity. His lessons are designed to meet the diverse needs of students, ensuring that every individual feels both challenged and supported. DeMarcus creates an environment where students thrive academically through his ability to not only share a safe and trusted classroom, but through his relationships with students as well. Students enter his classroom knowing that his expectation for everyone is to do their best. Mr. Lee's students are continuously ranked first or second across the district for their growth and achievement on assessments. This is a huge accomplishment for a second-year teacher. DeMarcus Lee has consistently demonstrated exceptional dedication not only in the classroom, but also in his role as an athletic coach, who came straight from track practice today. As a coach, Mr. Lee has led student athletes not only to success in the sports, but also in their personal growth. Coaches on campus say that he takes the time for all athletes to understand the details of each play and often works one-on-one with his athletes who want a deeper understanding. Coach Lee sees the importance of sharing his knowledge and experiences with his younger generation of student athletes. In addition to his teaching and coaching, Mr. Lee is a valued member of our school community. He works collaboratively with his colleagues, supports school-wide initiatives, and is always willing to lend a hand wherever needed. He has become a valuable member of several committees on campus, such as the foundations, the social committee, and he was also chosen to be our grade level team lead on the 3rd floor. That work to enhance the culture both with teachers and students. Even with his own responsibilities, Mr. Lee mentors other teachers by sharing experiences from teaching the curriculum and using successful classroom strategies for student success. He brings his enthusiasm, experiences, and positive attitude to all areas of our school. Mr. Lee is a true asset to our school community, embodying the values of excellence, commitment, and integrity that we strive for at SFA Middle School. DeMarcus Lee truly exemplifies what it means to be an educator and a coach who makes a profound impact on students both inside and outside of the classroom. Mr. Lee is incredibly deserving of this recognition, and there is no doubt that his continued contributions will positively influence our school community and our district. Yay! And you can keep this. But let's take a picture first. I'll come down.
I like that shirt.
Congratulations. And we certainly couldn't do it without our auxiliary staff, and we have an auxiliary employee of the month as well to be recognized by Custodial Services Supervisor Richard Scott from Johnson Elementary.
Good evening, board members. Custodial Services is proud to recognize Florentina Pinto de Colunga as the March 2025 Auxiliary Employee of the Month. Florentina has worked for Bryan ISD for 2 years. In October 2023, Florentina took on a challenging responsibility as the head custodian of Johnson Elementary. She leads 2 custodians in maintaining the cleanliness and disinfecting of the Johnson Elementary School campus. Florentina consistently exceeds expectations by keeping the Johnson Elementary campus clean and healthy. Although she is primarily responsible for the cleaning and disinfecting of the Johnson Elementary, she regularly provides custodial support at other campuses throughout the district. She has a strong work ethic and a keen attention to detail when it comes to ensuring her job is done correctly. In preparation for the recent inspection by the TEA, Florentina demonstrated her commitment to improving the campus safety and ensured that her employees were trained on how to stop the bleed, prepared her employees to effectively assist in a crisis situation, improving the campus's overall physical readiness. Florentina Pinto de Colunga's outstanding work ethic and attention to detail have demonstrated that she and her employees maintain the Johnson Elementary in an exemplary manner. Florentina, thank you for ensuring the high level of readiness of the Johnson Elementary School campus.
Congratulations. Thanks again to Mr. Robles and Truist Bank. We appreciate y'all's support. Now we have a really special recognition, and I'm going to let Dr. Leslie Holkamp provide the details. She is our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. It's like a pretty special deal. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. We're excited to celebrate our Social Studies and Foreign Language Coordinator, Lisa Mouton. She is receiving the John Crane Texas History Education Award from the Texas State Historical Association. This prestigious award recognizes her for her outstanding contributions to Texas History Day, our program that we call History Fair, and her dedication to advancing local history education. Beyond her work in our district, Ms. Mouton is deeply involved in our community. She serves on the City of College Station Historic Preservation Committee. She's the board chairman for the Brazos Valley African American Museum. She also acts as the treasurer for the Bryan chapter of Delta Kappa Gamma. It's a woman's organization that supports our teachers and our kids here in Bryan ISD. Additionally, she serves as a communication director at her church. We celebrate Ms. Mouton's leadership. 24 of our students from our districts have qualified to advance to the Texas History Day in our state competition in Austin this April. This is the largest group that we have ever sent to state competition, so we're super excited about that. These students represent Davila, SFA, Bryan High School, Bryan Collegiate, Rayburn, Long, and Sadbury. Our district is incredibly well represented at the regional competition, winning more awards than any other school district in our region. Students who place first or second at state will earn the opportunity to advance to a national competition. So congratulations to Ms. Mouton on this well-deserved recognition.
You want to do a board picture with this one?
With this one?
Can we come down and join you?
May we? So that's something else to do.
And next, Mr. Rush, you got something special to present. Powerlifting state qualifiers and champion.
Good evening. It is an honor to take this moment to recognize some truly outstanding student athletes and coaches. Through their dedication, hard work, and commitment, these students from Rotary High School and Bryan High School have represented their school with pride at the 2025 state powerlifting meet. So at this time, I'm going to recognize Coach Will now. He's going to come around and recognize his student athletes and talk a little about them.
We're fortunate to have two state qualifiers this year, Cade Duncan and Chester Gooden Jr. Cade couldn't make it this evening. He actually has a district golf meet tournament today. He's heading out there for us. He does it all, so very proud of him as well. He's our 114-pounder, and he finished 20th in the state, so I'm very proud of him. I want to recognize him real quick. Chester was able to make it. He did a great job for us in his first year powerlifting. Came to work every day, every lifting session, pushed himself every meet. He finished 15th in the state despite being one of the lightest competitors in the 275-pound class. He finished with a total of, make sure I get this right, 1,660 pounds, finishing 15th in the state for his weight class.
Wow.
Very good.
Yay.
He finished the meet with personal bests in every single lift. He's also an excellent student and a great teammate. Very glad to have him for another year, both on the football field and in powerlifting. Look forward to seeing him compete his senior year as well. Congrats.
So at this time, we're going to call up Coach George, Tip George. He's the head powerlifting coach at Rudder High School, and he's going to be recognizing his student athletes as well.
Good evening. I first want to recognize Michael Bruce Hendricks. He wasn't able to make it this evening, but he was a lone boy for our boys powerlifting team to make it to state. Even though things didn't go as well as planned as we had for him to do, he still had a great season. He left a mark not only in our program, but also for the region by setting a bench regional record in the 175 weight class at 470 pounds. So that's what Bruce did this year. And then these two young ladies right here. First, I want to introduce Kayla Pineda. She competed in the 105-pound weight class in the unequipped division, and on her way to claiming the fourth place medal, she set a personal best in squat at 205 and tied her personal records in both bench at 120 pounds and deadlift at 250 pounds, reaching a grand total of 580 pounds.
Wow.
And then finally, we have Kimberly Sanchez Lozano, competed in the 132-pound weight class, unequipped division as well. As those that were here last year, remember that she came up 5 pounds away from being the reigning and defending state champion, using the fuel to overcome adversity several times this season. Now we can say the queen of the 132-pound weight class resides at Rudder High School.
Yay.
She set the state record on squat with 290 pounds and posted seasonal records as well at bench at 120 pounds and deadlifting 290 pounds, with her reaching the grand total of 705 pounds.
Dang.
So our state champion for the 132-pound weight class.
Great job.
That is wonderful. So, Coach, do you get medals too, or just the girls?
I do not get medals, but they forgot
I
to bring
know,
theirs.
I mean-
But I would say the girls' medals are a lot better than the boys. They're real huge. They look kind of like baby little plates that they have. They're nice medals. I wish they would have brought them so they can show it to you. But that's on me. I take blame for that.
Coach, may I ask one more question, please? Do you give the gentleman at the school warning not to be smart Alex around these young ladies? 'Cause
Yes, I do.
it'd only take one time, and I'm sure they'll learn.
Like I said, when they walk through, everybody gets out the way.
Congratulations, ladies. Great job.
Thank you, guys.
That's wonderful. State champs.
All right, next. Yeah, well, let's do the picture. Oh, we got some flowers too. That's great.
Aww. Yay for our powerlifting program.
Congratulations. All right, next on the agenda, we have the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Stasny. I know Mr. Falls is running to turn the slide deck on. Congratulations again to our powerlifting coaches and our students. That's a hard act to follow. A lot of heavy lifting happening right here, state champion. As you can see on the slide, it's spring in Bryan ISD, and we are in full swing with daily student and staff celebrations with lots of family and community engagement. Tonight is a testament of the great things happening. So it's always hard to narrow our focus and shine a light. But on this first slide, I'm shining a light on Bryan Collegiate High School. They just celebrated their annual Avid Showcase. And this is not only a big deal for Bryan ISD because other administrators and teachers go over to take a look, but school district representatives from across the state actually show up as well because we have what we call a model district of best practices. So it's really great to collaborate and to share and to build capacity with others, again, in our state. We're very proud of what Collegiate is doing with Avid. To remind you, thank you to the board for approving this purchase and this investment, and we have expanded it in our middle schools and other high schools, and even one of our elementaries has a model program. Collegiate leads the way, if you will, because they started it and they've done it longer, and we're grateful for them developing others. We're also shining a light on all of our elementaries. They were so busy leading up to spring break, and you can see in the photo, lots of them had Go Texan Day, Go Western Day, lots of family events with full participation from all of our staff and our students. And then finally, on this page, we just had our annual Rudder in the Rotunda with their choir performance. They performed to a full house. I believe it was a sold-out performance at the highest caliber. If you've never attended the Rudder in the Rotunda, it is truly magical because of the acoustics in there. So we'll save the date for next year. It's a showstopper for sure. Fresh off the heels of the fourth grade track meet, we're still celebrating this. This is the most wonderful annual tradition where all of our fourth graders, every single one in the entire district, they show up. We had perfect weather, and I'm here to tell you that these kids were in it to win it. We have a lot of competitors, and I know our coaches were looking to see about the future of middle school and high school athletes. It was great fun. We also just celebrated MC Harris's spring graduation. This is also a huge celebration for our students as we send them out into the world destined for great things. And then finally, this is a big shout out for Dr. Hugo Ibarra and his team with the Community Affairs Department. They just recently returned from the TSPRA STAR Awards. That acronym stands for the Texas School Public Relations Association. We submitted lots of work that our team has done throughout the year, and they returned with 32 different awards at this very competitive conference. Of those 32 awards, 23 were gold level distinctions, 6 fell into the silver level distinction, 3 were bronze category, and then we also received what we call the Best in Show for the district's attendance magnet that was locally developed here. So congratulations to Hugo and his team for putting us on the map. We know how important it is to tell our story so that others don't tell it for us. We're proud of what we do, and we're not afraid to show and tell others about the great things. So, round of applause.
Good job.
Round of applause. Thank you. Speaking of applause, our soccer teams had quite the season, especially at Bryan High School. The girls' soccer team advanced into postseason, represented us very well at that level. And then the Rudder High School boys' soccer team also advanced and made us very proud. The kids had a great season. Several key players are returning next year, so we look for great things to come in the future. And then finally, right before spring break, the Friday night before we left for the holiday, it was our honor and pleasure to dedicate the Bryan High School softball field to Coach Janice Williamson. Her legacy will live forever, and it was a great turnout that night. Lots of her former players, many coaches that she developed over time showed up to support her. Of course, our community showed up in full force as well. We're very proud to have Janice Williams' name on that scoreboard, again, to live forever. So great things happening at Bryan ISD, and I appreciate the opportunity tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carabine. We'll move on to board member reports, starting with the Finance Committee. Mr. Stennis.
Okay, so Finance Committee met last Friday via Zoom at 10 a.m. The board members present were myself, Mr. Stasny, Mr. Gonzalez. Staff members present were Superintendent Carabine, Dr. Merrill, Bobby Griffith, Dr. Ibarra, Kevin Beesall, and Tabby Roberts. Items of discussion, we went over the ESS substitute contract. This is the vendor that the district uses to identify and help out with the recruiting and retaining of subs. Believe that Mr. Besaw presented that it's far more cost effective for us to continue to use this service rather than to provide this service in-house. Other things were addressing some needs at Merrill Green Stadium, the turf, potentially looking at the lights, identifying potentially a donor or other areas where we can continue to make those improvements. Status of the Rudder bathrooms over spring break. I think we can finally put to bed. The Rudder bathrooms are fixed and done, and we can move on from that one. Other things, or one last item was, I believe we're teeing it up for budget development, the early stages of that project. And so the consultant that I believe we used last year applauded the effort and actually used the Bryan ISD example throughout the state. And so a lot of good things going on, a lot of good conversations in the Finance Committee.
Thank you, David. Next, Executive Board Committee, I'll give that report since I was the only one that was there other than staff, which was fine. We just had some conflicts that day, so we had a good conversation anyway, and at least I personally got an update on some things, and we, as always, had something to talk about in terms of just things going on in the district and where we're headed and things that so much going on, and we're trying to juggle all the balls and not drop any of them. Get a little bit more on what seems to be sort of just sitting, the JEDI update, and I don't know if we're going to have anything else to talk about tonight, but we did talk a little bit about that, and also the board policy update that is also, I believe, on our agenda tonight. Not on part of the consent, or I don't know if that's.
Dr. Ibarra will.
Yeah, Dr. Ibarra will update us on that. And so that's really all I have for Executive Board Committee. We'll move on to City School, and that's Joel Bryan.
City School Joint Committee meeting occurred at the City of Bryan. I had the date.
Should be at the top.
This was on Tuesday, March 4th. Attending from Bryan ISD were Dr. Brian Merrill, Ms. Laura King, Mr. Kevin Besaw, Mr. David Stasny, Ms. Ruthie Waller, and myself. We had some topics that were on the agenda for the City of Bryan, and Mr. Hugh Walker gave us some background and information on the Keep Water Local campaign, which was a very interesting topic. And we also received an update on the Downtown North project. That was from Ms. Lindsay Gindy, and Ms. Irisha Jackson. Topics that were presented and discussed by Bryan ISD were some updates on CTE. We covered some recent happenings with CTE, including our recent District of Distinction recognition. Also, some recent happenings with expansion of MC Harris and both programs and student enrollment, and also discuss the topic of some exploration into CTE courses and how we can align some of our existing courses with CTE program. Also touched on our strategic planning and discussed our committee and meeting schedule, as well as the process overview and our objectives, and touched on school finance and legislative priorities. And there was also some good opportunities discussed in terms of how Bryan ISD and the City of Bryan can work together and identify partnerships and communication between, and it was a productive meeting.
Yeah, I agree. We were, I think, strengthening our relationship with the City of Bryan, and that's always a good thing. But we'll let you keep going with the CTE Fine Arts and Athletics Committee report.
CTE Fine Arts Athletics Committee met on Thursday, February 27th at 10 a.m. via Zoom. Attending were Mrs. Ginger Carabine, Dr. Brian Merrill, Mr. Jacob Justice, Ms. Laura King, Mr. Derek Rush, Ms. Ruthie Waller, Mr. David Stennis, and myself. It was a jam-packed meeting. This was our first committee meeting for this group, and we covered a lot of information. We discussed for CTE, again, some of our recent competition and district of distinction recognition and some recent happenings with all the things going on in CTE this spring, and progressing towards kicking off our 25-26 school year with planning and working on some mock four-year plans for our potential incoming ninth graders for the program. Also discussed some interest outside of Bryan ISD that is looking into opportunities in our CTE program. And again, course exploration and alignment opportunities with our existing coursework, and also strengthening community partnerships. Fine arts, so many things to celebrate. Just to name a few: mariachi orchestra, dance teams, a lot of things again happening this spring and upcoming events, UIL competitions. Mr. Justice also identified some needs associated with our fine arts program that are only due to increased participation, which is a great thing happening at Rudder, Davila, Bryan High School, that through additional student participation, we've identified some needs, and also discussed our TIA, teacher incentive allotment for fine arts, and some things that we're looking at regarding expanding that opportunity for fine arts. And athletics, again, more celebrations, a Vite magazine renewal for the upcoming fall. We discussed our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club for hosting our intermediate competitions. One that's upcoming is soccer that was recently announced. That'll be on Saturday, April 5th. Some things, good things happening with Coaches Academy and camps for intermediate coaches to expand their knowledge and bring those coaches together, and also just some additional priority needs list for athletics across the district.
Well, that's a lot. Thank you.
It was.
Yeah,
But a great meeting, a great first meeting for that committee.
Because this was actually a new committee, not only a new group, but a new committee. So we obviously recognize the need to have some committee work on that. The board members can't be everywhere at everything. So we try to divide up our resources and divide up the members to go to these committee meetings so they can then report back not only to us but to the public to the extent that we can. No decisions can be made in the committees because they are not not able to vote, certainly in terms of making decisions, but the committees are very important. And certainly, last but not least, is our Safety and Security Committee report. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, sir. The Bryan ISD Safety and Security Committee met right here in this room on Wednesday, March 19th at 3 o'clock. It was myself, Mr. Stasny, Ms. Carabine, and a lot of our cabinet. It was kind of an interesting meeting. We really didn't cover a lot of detail, but we had a nice show that I forgot the name of the company. It's in Evolve. Presented a type of, it's not a metal detector, it's much more evolved, I guess hence the name, than a metal detector, and it's able to detect weapons, metal, any other kind of objects that we would not want in a school building, but it's not as slow nor as intrusive as a metal detector. So it's very exciting technology. Mr. Stasny and I asked for some numbers, of course, on it. It looks great. It's very cool looking, but it has to be in our price range as well. So we had a great demonstration on that. Mr. Himmel updated the committee on the annual review and approval of the BISD Emergency Operations Plan and Cybersecurity Annex by the Texas School Safety Center. And then we went over, can't go into details, but we did have a couple of inspections by the state, and I would like to thank all of our principals, teachers, staff, everyone for helping keep our students safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think was acknowledged that we had a pretty good track record with regard to.
Yes, sir. I don't know how much I could say. It was great. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in terms of how our safety record with regard
Yes, sir.
to the, because they'll come by unannounced sometimes and check things out. So
Yes, sir.
thank you very much on that report. Moving on, next is our information items, public hearing, presentation of the district annual report, Texas Academic Performance Report. And it looks like we've got Dr. Ibarra, and I think we've got also Dr. Jill Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Stasny. Good evening. We are here today for our annual report. This is a public hearing, and so at a point in this moment, we will also ask the audience if they have any questions or need anything. Thank you very much for that. The annual report is required by statute and by board policy each year, and it has several components that comprise the full report. The full report is approximately 1,000 pages, so it's a little light reading, and it goes over all of your favorite things. Unfortunately, it was delayed this year due to a state reporting delay. We've had a couple of years now of reporting delays and information release delays from the Texas Education Agency, but regardless of the delay in getting that last piece, which was the Texas Academic Performance Report, the TAPER report, that data, whenever I do this report, it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day. We've already had several moments with the board and certainly many moments with campuses to go over the data from the prior year's STAR performance. So all of the data, or not all, the vast majority of that data we received in June. So it's not new data to us, but it is the annual report that we have to wait for so that we can finish this particular presentation. So if you'll bear with us as we go through the information this evening, I know a lot of it is a review for this group. You'll also notice on the annual report they added a new component this year. The board annually approves or reviews the House Bill 3 goals for early literacy, numeracy, and college career and military readiness. So those are now required to be a part of this report. So you'll hear a little bit about those this evening as well. Any questions before I move on? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Morris. We're going to talk a little bit about comparable groups and how we get to these moments. But I'm not able to click. There we go.
Okay. Good evening. So each year when we look at the TAPER report, we find other districts in the state that are most like us. And you can see the Bryan ISD numbers for total enrollment, our percent of low-income students, our percent of English learners, and our mobility rate. And we set some boundaries, and we use a peer finder to help us do that. And with those numbers in mind, again, I think for the third year, we've come up with the same comparable group. So these 5 districts are most like us throughout the state. So through the rest of this presentation, when we talk about comparable groups, we're talking about an average for those 5 districts. And so you can see what we mean by they're more like us. The red, and this will be the same throughout this presentation, the red represents the state average, the green is that comparable district average for those 5 districts, and the blue is Bryan ISD. So when we look at economically disadvantaged, our emergent bilingual, our at-risk, and our mobile students, we're much more similar to that comparable group than we are to the state.
Okay, so on the Texas Academic Performance Report, when we look at the STAR performance, we're looking at 3 different levels of performance. We're looking at approaches, meets, and master's level performance. So we're going to start with approaches, and then we'll go through each of the others as well. When we look at approaches grade level performance across the board, you'll see that the district outperforms the comparable group in most categories with a slight decline as compared in social studies, and is below the state across the board in those. But again, with a comparable group, we do outperform them in 3 of the 4 areas. When you go to the meets level performance, you'll see that similar pattern continue and persist. The House Bill 3 goals that the state put in place during the prior legislative sessions all relate to the meets level performance. So when we talk about our House Bill 3 goals, we are required for early literacy and numeracy to set goals based on third grade meets level performance, okay? So when we do that, we set those goals, and I'm going to ask Dr. Morris to come back up here and go over early literacy and numeracy.
So just as a note, these goals, these are supposed to be 5-year goals as required by statute. These goals were set using the 21-22 STAR performance. That was before we had the new STAR. So as you can see on the graph, both last year and the prior year, we were slightly under our goal for literacy. And again, this is just our third grade students. So that's why these meets numbers look a little different than what you saw on the previous slide, because it's just that one grade level. And so part of the literacy goals, we report on them, but we also have to have an action plan. So this is a summarized action plan that our curriculum instruction department is working closely with campuses, teachers, instructional coaches to make sure that they have everything they need. We use the reading horizons to help with, and I was a secondary math teacher, so some of this is Greek to me, but with the systematic instruction and phonemic awareness, letter knowledge, phonics, and sight words. And so our teachers are trained on those explicit reading instruction skills using the reading academies that are required by the state. We also spend a lot of time making sure students can successfully write, because now writing is involved in all of the STAR tests, so that's an important part of this literacy piece. But we also want them to be prepared to take the test. And while we are not prepping for the test and spending a lot of time, we do make sure that they know how to operate the testing platform. Because if they can't do that, especially our younger students, if they don't learn how to do that, then it doesn't matter what they know if they can't figure out how to answer the question. So we are incorporating that into instruction by using the platform as a model, so the teachers are modeling, then the students get a chance to work on it.
Dr. Morris, may I ask you on, so on 22-23, were the training to try to get our scores up, had that already been implemented? I'm wondering why we had I know it's not a great decrease from 22 to 23 to 23, 24, but it seems like if we were implementing that, why didn't we have an increase? Is there an explanation, easy one on that one?
I think part of it is just the test itself.
Okay.
The whole state saw a dip.
Okay.
And so sometimes tests are, even though they try to make them so they're the same level of rigor from year to year, sometimes one year is harder or easier than the other.
Okay, so we're on par with wherever we were. There's not a dramatic,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously it's 1% here, so.
I wouldn't consider 1%
Gotcha.
decrease. I would call that stable.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Morris, do you want to remind everyone that the state also started requiring everyone to take the test on the computer? So the
That's
third
right.
grade students for both of these years?
Right, and we actually did that the prior year
It's a
because
pilot.
we kind of took advantage of the year where we weren't going to have ratings due to COVID, and we let all of our students go ahead and start testing online just to build that capacity. But then they switched to all these new item types, and so we kind of had to start again and build that capacity with our students again.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and for math, you'll see a similar pattern, and again, we mirror the state with the drop in that meets level performance. And so some things we've implemented or continue to implement are the daily mastery checks and being sure that teachers are correcting or filling gaps in the moment instead of waiting until 2 weeks. Because as a math teacher, if you let a child practice something wrong for 2 weeks before you go back and correct it, they've learned it wrong, and it's so hard to get them to learn it the right way. So fixing those things immediately. Working on small group instruction and intervention. Providing those resources. Our curriculum department's doing a great job providing resources to help our teachers do all of this work. I know that my department, especially Sarah Chupp, has been working very closely with campuses and almost every day she's out on a campus having data conversations with teachers so that they're more able to analyze the data, and then make instructional decisions. And I could have said that for the literacy part too, because she does both.
Was that part of the, I'm sorry, the same, I'm not harping on the bad, I just want to know I know we're working to make sure that we
Yes.
get everything up. So
Yeah, we are.
the state also had a similar dip as to what we had, is that correct?
They did.
Okay, because I know we'll get asked that question, but if it's across the state, then, like you said, we're not floundering or going down, we're simply learning with everybody else at the same time, is what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, and so we just have to be sure our kids know how to operate that platform, and I know that our teachers and campuses are working so hard to make sure that's happening.
And you said this, but I want to emphasize that the test changed dramatically.
It did.
During this time. Can you give us just a little insight, and maybe this is Dr. Ibarra, on how, and remember, these are third graders, so very small children, taking a test online on math. How did it change from past years?
So prior to this, the test was basically multiple choice with maybe a few where they called them gridables, where they had to solve a problem and get a numerical answer and bubble it in. Well, now, depending on the grade level, they may have one where they have a sentence stem with some blanks and, where they have to make comparisons maybe with greater than, less than, and use the words. They may have a graph or a number line where they have to actually plot points on the number line, either by clicking or they call them drag and drops. So they might have a Venn diagram and they have to drag the right pieces to the right parts. So it's
And
very
though I
much.
know we give our students lots and lots of time to try to practice these skills, they are third graders.
They're
who are-
8 years old.
Who are learning math concepts that are brand new for the first time. Are we also one-to-one at this grade level? So students are taking their devices home? Are they able to use them at home?
They do not take them home, but there is enough in the classroom for every student to have access. Picking up on what Dr. Morris was mentioning on the types of questions, we were in a data talk with Dr. Chupp now and teachers, and one of the questions was a mathematics question. It was intermediate level, so it's a little bit different, but the response required the students to take the 4 values and put them from least to greatest. And it's a series of fractions and decimals and put them in the correct order. So you had to put them all in the correct order by dragging and dropping them to get the question correct. So if 2 were transposed, you did not get credit for that question. So the students are having to learn, one, to work out every aspect of the problem for all of the numerical values and then put them in that correct order that was required to get the credit for that particular question. Similar problems happen on the younger grades, along with short constructed responses where the students need to provide a written response also at 3rd grade.
Yeah, I was going to say, the writing is now embedded, right, across grade level, including math. So that's new as well.
And one other thing I'd like to point out, Jill has it up here, the new K-8 curriculum is being reviewed for the 25-26 school year. If you'll recall, several board meetings ago, we talked about the instructional materials allotment, and we talked about the new way the state is approving curriculum materials for schools to utilize. The mathematics curriculum has not been renewed by the state of Texas since 2015. And so we finally have access to be able to adopt, I think they had 3, maybe 4 items that would work K-8 on a list of approved curriculum materials. And so we're hopeful and looking forward to ordering mathematics curriculum materials for our students since our current ones are fairly outdated.
10 years old.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think, just want to remind people, when we had that discussion, the state does not give us enough allotment to be able to buy all that we need for our children.
No, Dr. Harlan, that's a very great point that has actually fallen short on funding, in particular during the years where we had the ESSER funding from the federal government. They remarked, they being the state of Texas, TEA, that they would reduce our instructional materials allotment since we had federal funding and we could use that instead, which we had to come to the board and request gap year fundings to cover all the gaps since we did not have enough funding from those 2 sources to handle it.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry to interrupt your
No, please.
presentation in this way, but I want it just to be known to the public that as they see these numbers, it's an image that I don't think any of us would be happy with 35% of our students meeting some goal, right? But it's also by design, when you change everything about the curriculum, we're testing in new ways using electronic means with small children, that there are changes to be expected here. So I just want to make sure it's really transparent that this does not mean that we're doing worse than we were before.
Dr. Harlan, that's actually what the Commissioner of Education wanted us all to know as well, that we should expect lower results even if the students improved. That's exactly his communication to all board members across the state of Texas as they embarked on this. And as you all recall, I know most of these ratings and results are all tied up in court injunctions for the past 2 years and are still being tossed around in that arena. So, but regardless of what those are, we still take a look at what the data tells us about what the needs of the students are, and then we pivot and we adjust to make sure that we're meeting those needs. One area, if I can keep going.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. One area where it was not that same story, you'll look at the master's level performance. We talked about approaches, meets, and masters. And so we still outperformed the state and the comparable group with master's level performance. So again, it's not that we don't have exceptional students who are high achieving and performing in great capacity on all of these assessments. We absolutely do, and we're very proud of the work of their teachers and of the students. So that is also there for your children.
One other demographic that I wanted to touch on,
Yes, ma'am.
particularly for third graders, and I don't think it's been brought up yet, is our English language learners.
Yes, ma'am.
As they compare to these other comparable districts and the state of Texas, we have a very large number of young children that are learning English language while they're being tested
Yes.
in English.
And then most of us realize that one of the last aspects to develop in an English language learner's journey is the ability to write in that other language. And so with writing appearing on every version of the state assessment now, that also puts them at a big learning curve to be prepared and to feel confident on those assessments. Yes, thank
So
you.
when you were, Dr. Morris, talking about the comparable districts, Duncanville, Bastrop, Waco, they also, comparatively, they have these same English language learners as convince me that they do. They have the same amount of English language learners that we have that are taking this test online, third graders.
Now, I can't say specifically third graders. Overall, and I can go back and look at, no, I'm not sure I can look at just third graders with the reports that are available
Well,
for us.
that's okay.
But overall, they're actually a little bit higher than us. They're at 31%, and we were at 30 last year, so.
No, I'm talking about overall, our English language learners for our district.
We are 30% of our students are English language learners.
Okay.
And
it's-
sorry, I missed
that's
that. I was looking at the other things, but yeah, I think it's really important just to remember who are our children and what are they struggling with at a very early age. And being asked to do math and write and do all of that is just very challenging. And not that that's an excuse. We want all of our students to excel, but it explains some of what we're seeing in the numbers.
And what they, like, you were talking about I think of it as the infrastructure of the test. The teachers have to teach these young children, who a lot of them don't have a computer to go home and be on the whole time, teach themselves how to do that how to click and drag and drop for math problems.
It's hard. We do have the advantage of having Schoology, which has some of that same technology. Our testing software, Eduphoria Aware, that we use, and when students take DBAs or benchmarks, they can do it in Aware and has some of those same capabilities. So we're trying to give them multiple ways to practice that.
Yeah, it
Those
just
are-
reminds me of, my teacher education program, which says that if the method by which we're testing becomes the thing that we're getting data on, then it's probably not a great method. And so I just want to remind us that, particularly with third graders, these are tactile skills too that we're testing, and they may not all have that. I know some grew up on an Xbox or a whatever, a Game Boy, whatever they are now. What am I missing? Who's the people with young kids? You know what I'm talking about. But not every child grows up with those things, with that hand-eye coordination as well.
Okay, so also in the volume of data in that 1,000-page report, we looked at chronic absenteeism, and this is some good news as well. Chronic absenteeism has decreased in the district, which is what you'd like to see. We would like that blue bar to be as short as possible on this graph. And so we see that right after the 1920 school year where COVID interrupted education, 2021 chronic absenteeism was approximately 22% in Bryan, which was still better than the comparable group. And then in 21-22, we saw a bit of an increase. That's when we started seeing more students being required to come back and needed to make sure they were here every day, but we were still much lower than the comparable group. And then this past time that we have data on the 22-23 school year, we are even with the state of Texas and have a lower chronic absenteeism rate than the comparable group. So again, we need them in schools so that we can teach and educate and learn and take care of them. So we're glad to see that number continuing to improve. We talk about graduation rates. This is the core of our business. We talk about cohorts of graduation, and we do this little example every year, but if the entire Board of Trustees entered 9th grade in the exact same year, then you would be in a cohort. Forever and always, that would be your cohort. And so we look at how many students in that cohort, what percent are graduating 4 years and 5 years after entering that cohort. And as you can see from the data, we are higher than the state and slightly below the comparable group. And so
Well, why is that? I mean, it just makes no sense. Looking at all the other data that they're more disadvantaged on some items. Is it the region they're in? What would cause that? Do you have any idea? I'm just curious. I
can't really speak to why the states is lower. They do have a few more districts than just us, of course, in the comparable group. So it could be the number of districts included in the calculation versus the 5 or so in the comparable group, and then the singular us in that blue bar. But historically, the state, it takes a big shift to move the number at the state level and a big change. This district has worked very targetedly and very purposefully since before 2017 to turn that number around. It did not used to be in the 90s, and so we've inched and worked and really come together as a team to purposefully focus on it, and we'll continue to do
so. That's great, because the differences are, it could be the margin of error. They're so close. So I was just curious if there was, because I'm very proud of those numbers.
Different.
I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but there is one of the districts that their graduation rate is like 97, 98.
Wow.
So that kind of skews.
It skews everything. But no, our numbers are great. Thank you all.
And that's you again.
Yep. So one of the other things that House Bill 3 requires us to track is college, career, military readiness. Remember, that's performance on things like the SAT or the ACT, the TSI, all those college entrance types of tests, taking and passing AP or IB test, taking dual credit courses. The fact that our district is a CTE district of distinction also plays into this, because earning those industry-based certifications is a part of that. And finally, we have military readiness back in the mix, because the state of Texas has worked out an agreement with the Department of Defense that we can get that, or the state can get that data. So military enlistment will now be included in that. And so as you can see on this graph, we set goals, and this is one of those lagging indicators. So the most recent data we have is for the 2023 grads, even though we're about to graduate the class of 2025. So we have this data and we have surpassed our goal. And I attribute that to the work and the counseling department, advanced academics, CTE, all working together to come alongside and make sure that as many students as possible are college, career, or military ready when they graduate.
I think that this page is the reason, is the difference, like, I think what Mr. Gonzalez was talking about too. This page is one of the things that makes up the difference from like 3 pages ago. Our scores are lagging for whatever reason. Then those kids start getting involved. Then they start finding their niche in school. Then they realize being in school is good and fun and productive, and they can get certifications and graduate with all kinds of degrees or certifications, partial degrees. And I was there at this barbecue cook-off right here, and our students have fun. There's programs available to them. So the difference in their lagging in scores when they're small, this sort of thing and what we have to offer keeps them in school and is another major reason for our elevation in graduation rate.
Would you also speak to the change in indicators at the state level? And that number might change in the future with the CTE.
Yes. So CTE, the accountability system is ever evolving, but CTE, they're changing their indicators. Used to, if you earned the industry-based certification, we got CCMR credit. And they've been doing this slow rollout where you have to take at least 2 courses and then earn the certification in that pathway. And then you have to take 3 courses and earn the certification. Now you have to be a completer, so you have to take the whole pathway and then take the certification. And so we have been planning for that for multiple years because we did not want to be caught unawares or behind. So even before it was required, we were having students, kind of work a year ahead so that we, or a year ahead of where the state told us we had to be so that we could make sure that we were prepared. Plus, it was good for students. Is that what you? Okay. Oh, I think it's still me.
Yeah, sorry, it's going back. Sorry.
Okay. So the last few parts of the annual report are reporting on the financial status. You've already had a report on this. We have the superior rating, so I don't need to belabor that. And then the district accreditation status. The most recent status is from the 22-23 school year because they have to have accountability ratings to do the accreditation status the way it's set. So we are still accredited and we'll stay that way. The campus performance objectives, those campus improvement plans that the board approved back in October, each one of those is part of the annual report as well as it's already been posted on our website. And then this whole entire annual report has been posted on the website. I would advise against printing it unless you have lots of paper because it's, like Dr. Barr said, it's almost 1,000 pages.
On I'm very proud of our military rating, that graph. Are we ahead of the other districts? In that, can we compare that to the state?
Yes, I don't know by how much, but as I recall, we were
miles ahead. We'll just go with that.
Well, we can always, yes, we can always say that. But yes, sir.
We can look that up.
But I just
Off the record, from what I can tell when I meet with district leaders in the region, that we are probably at the top of the chart in our entire region.
Great.
As evidenced by the District Distinction Award, we're basically in the top 3% in the state right now.
Great.
So we hope to maintain this, but what you were talking about those changes, we're not
really excited about the changes with CCMR, with CTE certifications in particular. It's contrary to what districts do when we encourage kids to get involved and to explore and to take some courses for interest, like what Ruthie was saying. I think we could see a dip or a decline across the state with all that.
Yeah, I think that's one of my concerns. As we move forward under the new accountability metrics and the system of must have this and this and that, you can have a student who obtained the industry-based certification and still not receive any credit for that. The student is prepared for post-secondary, but the district would be penalized in the accountability system because the certain sequence of courses leading up to it weren't completed in the way the state said they needed to be, even though the child obtained the industry-based certification. So there's a little bit of a rub there with that.
Well, there's always, and that's what's so frustrating, as everyone knows, and want the public to know. You know, you look at our scores, yeah, we might be lower, but you don't know everything that went into it. You know, what day, what time, which grade, which area. And so I know it's not indicative that we're doing poorly, is what I'm trying to say. So I just appreciate everybody staying on top of it. And I know it's a big job, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one more comment about the TABOR report. So TABOR report has been around for a super long time.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? But if I look at data in this TABOR report versus past year's TABOR report, I mean, they all have data and percentages and all the things. Would you say that we're comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges in new TABOR reports versus old TABOR reports?
I would say that depending on which indicator you're looking at. Chronic absenteeism, pretty consistent.
Okay.
Attendance, pretty consistent. Star performance, those are different measures.
But we've called it the same thing.
Yes.
Correct?
We changed the assessment, but did not change the name of the test.
And I need people to hear that. Like, we changed almost everything about the assessment. What we're assessing, how we're assessing, all the things.
Yes.
And yet we're still using basically same name and we're sort of saying it's the same metric when in fact it's very different than what it was before.
Which is precisely why it's tied up in court injunctions for 2 years now.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wasn't going to do this, but I feel I have to say it. I hope that the public sees that and hears that because it's part of a narrative about the negativity of public schools. It's trying to paint a picture that public schools are quote unquote failing and that parents need choice for private schools. So that's all being duked out right now in Austin with our legislators. But it's really disappointing when we're part of public schools and we know the good work that's happening and we know that this is not transparent. Like, it is not transparent to have a different test that measures different things, that is given a different way, that, by the way, was not tested. It wasn't pilot tested robustly. There was no reliability and validity of the way we're asking these questions, and yet we're couching it as the same thing.
And to your point, Dr. Harlan, when Dr. Morris mentioned earlier that we're accredited from the 22-23 school year because that's the last time ratings were issued, the district was an 86B during that time frame under the original accountability provisions and the original STAR assessment. And that's when the commissioner came out and said, schools, just be prepared. Your schools may actually improve and yet still receive a grade level lower rating under the new system, the new accountability metrics, and the new assessment. That's why the commissioner came out and spoke to board members about that.
Well, I hope our parents demand transparency of our government and the way that we're being managed in these cases, because school districts don't have choices on the tests we give. We don't. The state tells us what we're doing, and so we do those things, and yet, being imposed.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan.
I was at a fundraiser Saturday night, and there was a former principal from Bryan ISD there, had been retired for a while, and she and my wife and I were sort of discussing, managed to get into public schools and vouchers and so on, and the former principal said something to the effect that, well, you know, they're in this other state, I'll just say it was Florida, you know, that it looks like they're having some success. Well, my wife, Mary, immediately said, how do you define success? And she paused, the former principal paused and said, that's a very good question, because that's that's what we're struggling with as far as how do we define success, how does the state define success, and how are they going to define success when you've got a bunch of cherry-picking private schools out there that are going to be able to say, hey, this is the students we want. So it is an ongoing battle to try to convince the public that we are working hard, we are not trying to cut corners, we are doing everything we can to educate every child, but at some point, there just has to be, learn about your schools and find out what we're doing, go visit, and then if you really think we're not doing the best that we can possibly do or that anybody can do, then you can say what you want to say, but don't believe these outsiders that come in and pump a bunch of money into pushing an agenda that, and as was already been mentioned, that part of that strategy is to disparage what we're doing when it's just simply not warranted. So anyway, it's out there. It's hard to really convince people based on what we've got to work with that we're doing the job that we know we're doing.
Before you sit down, I want to say that if people want to see our students, all from kindergarten to the ones that are fixing to graduate, every side of town, happy kids, come to the showcase downtown Bryan, April 4th, and our kids will be center stage doing what they do, showing off what they do in school, talking to you about the fun things and what they're learning and the good things that are going on. So this is as good a time as any to say, you want to come see our kids and see who we really have as clientele, our bottom line, which is the profit we have, our children come to this showcase downtown Bryan. What time does it start? 6, 5? It's here, it's right here.
6.
Anyway, come to our showcase. Downtown Bryan on April the 4th at
6
come
p.m.
at 5. Just come at 5, we'll be there.
Yes. There are presentations starting at 5.
Yes, come one, come all, downtown Bryan, first Friday, joining forces with Destination Bryan in the city of Bryan. It's the best event in town.
Thousands of our
Thank you.
kids will be
Thank you, Ms. Waller.
All right, well, I guess we're done with our public hearing. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
I guess, did you turn? I guess we didn't have a lot of audience out there to ask questions, but if anybody still wants to ask one, please jump in. Okay, now for the show that we've all been waiting for, budget development update from Kevin Besaw. Can you top that, Kevin?
Yeah, top the taper.
I'm sure not, so that's why I'm bringing Dr. Ibarra and Dr. Merrill with me, because I know they can top that. So thank you. Tonight we're going to do a little review and update, clarify some information, legislative update, following the bills that are pending that will affect our finances. And just want to make sure at this point the legislature is at a phase where there should be no new bills introduced unless there's special circumstances. But they still have to be worked through the House and the Senate, and then receive the governor's signature before they become law. And just remember, we have to adopt our budget, I believe at the June night meeting will be our target. So because of the fiscal year change, that's when we'll have it at that meeting.
You've been at this for quite a few years. Is this maybe the toughest year ever for trying to create a budget? You got somebody behind you shaking his head, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to get more drawn out and more.
Poor Kevin.
Yeah, everything is up in the air. It seems like more than it ever has been. But of course, it's hard to top. Last year when the prior session they went into the 4 sessions, special sessions, and didn't end until December. So, but we'll keep at it, and whatever they decide, we're going to put together a budget, and we'll move forward and do the best we can for our students. But as we go through this process, we always want to remember, we're going to keep in mind that whatever the budget is, we're going to use it to support our high-quality instruction and resources, and then retain a high-quality workforce, so we have the best teachers that we can get. Maintain a healthy fund balance. That's always top priority of mine, to make sure that we're in a good situation so we can weather the storm as we need to, and as we have this last couple of years. And then safety and security is always a top priority, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, the allotment and things that they have for that.
No doubt, the question about how complicated it is very true. We'll touch on a few of those things that seemingly would seem like it would be simple. Some things stayed the same, but that actually makes it more complicated. And Ruthie, I would agree. CCMR and graduation rate that's what we should be measured by. When you look at it, are kids graduating, and are they graduating with a career, college, or military ready? That's truly the number they're set forth and ready to enter into the workforce, or go into the military, or enter into college. And so going back to the previous presentation, I would agree 100%. And so this is stayed the same, 6160, and you've seen this cup many, many times. In fact, we've kind of joked about it. It's become the cup, not only that we've used in board meetings, but every time we step in front of principals, any staff, including teachers. We've used this countless times, and it really becomes, I think, a very clear visual for the representation of the way the state of Texas funds us. So 6160 is per student, and again, that's at 100% attendance. We've already talked about sort of the attendance numbers and the consistency with that. Even though we're beating it, you're still not at 100%. There's no way that every kid's going to show up on every given day, and what you see is they're really in some ways resistant, if not downright. They're just not going to change that, meaning they're going to give us our ADA, average daily attendance, and they're only going to give us a portion of that 6160. And again, depending on the special programs.
Since we continue to vent about, at least a little venting about how we're being treated as public schools.
Sure.
Is that the way the charter schools
are
being treated? No, it's not based on attendance. It's based on
just
enrollment.
100%. They're just given for enrollment.
And then that's true for also at least what we're hearing on the
yes, sir.
The vouchers.
Vouchers, yes, sir.
Yes.
They get it, and the $10,000, they get it, and that's what it is. They just get the enrollment dollar. They don't get a weighted ADA or the ADA, the average daily attendance. Yes, sir.
And even though it seems like a small percentage,
it's significant. Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll elaborate. In Bryan ISD, we hover around 94% attendance. So if we were funded on enrollment, that would be an additional $7 million for our budget.
It's not a small portion at all. So there we go. Let's see, wrong way. There we go. All right, when you look at it, no matter what the state kicks in, our local portion is going to make up the difference. So if they put more in, ours is going to be less, and regardless, the other way around. And so it's going to be the 6160. So even if property values are going up, this happens to be a common just misconception. It's like, oh, property values are increasing, which they are, and that means that we should have more money. That's actually not the case. So as the local money goes up, the state portion goes down. So it's going to stay the same level regardless of what's happened locally. And it's great that we live in the Brazos Valley and we see that type of support and that type of growth, but it doesn't mean that we're actually going to see additional dollars. So it's going to be consistent no matter what it is. I promise I can push a button. Right hand. There we go. All right, now you talked. I know.
Do you need
I didn't know my right from the left. You
Do you need Dr. Ibarra to do it for you?
I do. Here you go. That's sad. Okay. She just was less visible with hers than me. All right, we talked about Mr. Stasny, the difficulty and sort of the complexity. Well, here you go. You look at what's happened. We're going all the way back to 2019 dollars. We all know that 2019 dollars do not go as far as they do now. And so we've kept the funding the same, and here we are in 2025, and yet we still have the same funding. So fuel costs are up 91%, utilities are up 7%, property insurance up 204%, and then health insurance up 21%. And what you find, if they had just increased for inflation, we would be at $15 to $16 million more. Now that number is staggering to me. that they have not adjusted for inflation since 2019, even though they've had an abundance of savings, billions of dollars earmarked and then not spent, not sent out. And clearly, we've talked a little bit about what's happening in Austin, but you see the implications of it. That's one of the complexities of that you alluded to. It's even though the funding stayed the same, nothing else has stayed the same. The complexities of educating the children and then the increase in cost is tremendous.
Brian, is that 15, 16 million based on our average daily attendance rate?
Yes, sir.
So in
Oh,
addition to the 15,
add
16 million?
Yeah, 21. You're in the $20 million. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, thank you.
And so these are the factors here again that Mr. Stasny was pointing out. We had record inflation the end of ESSER. I'm honestly very thankful for the way we spent ESSER. We spent it directly on the staff, which has allowed us to be able to maintain what we've had through the years. And then obviously with no change to the basic allotment. Those three things have really created a statewide financial challenge. And again, we've done this with staff, we've done it with our teachers, we've done it with everyone. Pull out your phone, look at what's happening across the state of Texas, and what you find is every district is in the same place. Some in significantly worse than we are. We're thankful for our finance department. We're thankful for the decisions that you've made, to be completely honest, and it's allowed us to be in a very healthy situation, but at the same time, we're staring at the edge of the cliff. And reality is, if the state doesn't do something, then we have made changes, and we're going to continue to have to make changes.
Yes, and then, so we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of allotments and the things that, you've heard that, the governor's talked about. We received a lot of money, and they put more money out there than the 6160. But one of the examples here, a couple of things that are mandated by the state, and they're underfunded. So when the additional funds that are on the weighted average daily allotment, or for example, those kind of things, where that money has to go. Transportation is one example. Our state allotment for last year was $1,467,000, and the cost on our transportation department last year was a little over $6 million. So you can see the funding that we received for transportation was almost $5 million underfunded. That money has to come from some other allotment somewhere else, the basic allotment, or wherever you can pull it. But another one is safety and security. That's a big one, and we're going to go over a little more detail on that one. But the state allotment was a little over $500,000, and the cost that we spent are about $3.4 million. So again, almost $3 million underfunded on that.
I will confess that I didn't know that the transportation was that bad. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. And so, again, where does that extra money come from? It's coming basic allotment, I guess, pretty much.
Yeah, you take all the other allotments, and whatever is excess from those, you use that to cover for that one. And
so it just makes us, once again, that makes it that much harder, number one, to even pay the bus drivers what they deserve, and number two, how in the world do we pay teachers what they deserve if we're having to pay it's not like we can cut the salaries of the bus drivers. They're working for very low pay anyway, considering what they have to do. So again, it's a little more venting, but I wish people would really see this and say, this is crazy. This can't continue. And it's almost like it's I'm sure a lot of people already think it's a recipe for destroying public schools. And is that what you want? And that seems to be where we're headed if they don't get their act together, and it's pretty scary right now. But anyway, that was just a little more venting.
Yes, sir. And just going to go into a little detail on just one particular allotment, just to kind of show how that all calculates out behind the scenes, or behind the curtain, so to speak. So if the safety allotment, the funding calculation, we start with enrollment. We receive funding for only half-day pre-K, so we have about 900 pre-K students. We reduced the enrollment by about 450 to take that out. And then the attendance rate, we've mentioned 94%. So that gets us to our average daily attendance of 14,617. The safety allotment now is per student $10, so that would be $146,000. And then when they change the requirement that we needed to have armed security personnel at each campus. They added $15,000 per campus. So that's another $375,000 for a total of $521,000. There's a down there, I'll go back to that in a second. So 24-25 expenses, if you look, our school resource officers are split with the cost with the city of Bryan is about $1.2 million. Security guards for the rest of the campuses is about $830,000, and then you can see there's security film. We did some vestibules, window replacements, different things for security, e-hall pass, a couple of programs. There are critical response maps, some things that we did that we spent $3.4 million on. So the allotment of $521,000, you can see doesn't quite cover that.
And just to expand a little more, I know not everything that's on the 2024-2025 expenses was mandated. Some of those were choices we made because they're important for safety of our staff and our students. But the things that were mandated, so school resource officers, the security guards, the security fencing. So even if I just look at the things that were mandated, what they gave us to cover that is abysmal. It doesn't come close. Would that be true?
That'd be correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in the last session, they did talk about increasing the amount for this allotment. And you'll notice that safety allotment per student to $10 is because they gave us an extra 28 cents per kid to round up to $10. So that was 28 cents more, and then the 15,000 more. So, Kevin, this is a great example of the reality. When you see what's being shared out there with all the extra money in addition to the basic allotment, just know that it's not discretionary. We can't take this money dedicated for safety allotment and turn around and use it for salaries, et cetera, because we're trying to satisfy mandates and that we're already underfunded. So it's really confusing to our public when they share that we have all the additional money coupled with the $61.60 per child if it were perfect attendance. But the best way to describe that is it is not discretionary, is to satisfy a litany of mandates.
It's an insult to the public students in Texas that the state thinks that there's only $10 worth of safety that needs to be spent per student.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, that's correct. You can see the cost that we incur to try to do that is quite a bit more than that. And in fact, there is a bill that's in the legislature right now, Senate Bill 260, that if that passed, it would increase this allotment to $20 per student and $30,000 per campus. So basically double it, which gets us to a little over $1 million. But you can see just for the security officers alone, which is mandated, that's a little over $2 million. So it still only gets us to about half of what it takes to get the security officers on the campus. And that's just it's a good example of what the allotments. They all have some required things or required spend on them, and so but several of them are in this situation where they're not nearly enough to make up the things that we are required to do. And then you may have heard something going on at the federal government level, where federal funds, the president's ordered the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. And so that's very uncertain. What does that mean for us? The list there is the consultants and help with collaborating with other districts and so on. With TASBO, the Texas Association of School Business Officials, with Amanda Brownson last year, remember, came in, helped us walk through the local budget areas and where we could get more efficient, anything that we could streamline to better utilize our funds. And then Amy Campbell with TASB, we're working on a compensation review to try to make sure where we are, what's the market. Are we, below market? How far below market compared to the other districts? And then we're working on a program right now. We're starting with for the Federal Programs Fund. We're again reaching out to TASBO. Miss Sonia Nizey is looking at helping us walk through that, making sure we're being the most efficient as we can, and looking at what's this reduction going to look like for us. how much is this going to impact our federal funds, and make sure that we are using those as efficiently and effectively as we can.
Okay, so let's talk about what's going on in the legislature right now. Just a high-level overview of a few of the bills that pertain to school funding. House Bill 2 has been pending in committee for a while now. Under that particular bill, the increase in the basic allotment would be an additional $220 per student. And just to remind the board, to adjust for inflation, that increase would need to be, I think, roughly $1,300 per student. So for our district, at a 94% attendance rate, that'd be additional $3.2 million as it stands right now. One of the stipulations, pretty typical when they do these types of increases, is that 40% must be dedicated to compensation. Previously, it was 30%. So they put rules attached to what that funding can be used for as they increase the basic allotment. But certainly $220 more does not keep up with inflation or cover any of the costs with mandates. One of those allotments, Mr. Bisson mentioned a few of them a few moments ago, but compensatory education allotment, we're going to get a half of a penny under this particular bill, so I'm sure that'll be very impactful. We have increases to the teacher incentive allotment, which we applaud. We want to make sure that the teachers who earn that particular distinction are compensated appropriately. They're looking at shifting funding for special education students to based on intensity of services, which is needed and would be very helpful. They're looking at creating another allotment for fine arts that would particularly support those programs. They went ahead and added in prohibiting uncertified teachers in the core curriculum for the coming years. And they even did one nice thing in this little draft of a bill, creating a grant, although I wish they would just fund it, to reimburse school district for TRS costs for those associated with hiring retired teachers. This is one of those things that we've advocated for years, is to be able to hire retired teachers and bring them back into the workforce where there's not a TRS penalty of an additional fee that we pay to have them employed more than 19 hours a week. So it would be under ESSER, we were able to do that. Since that has gone away, those penalties are back in place. So that is one of the bills. Another one is Senate Bill 26. This one is titled the Teacher Pay Bill. It did pass the Senate, and it has moved on to the House Public Education Committee. It does do some additional changes to the teacher incentive allotment, increasing the amounts and creating some other levels of distinction. Would provide free pre-K enrollment for all classroom teachers in districts where pre-K is offered. In Bryan ISD, we do it at a very reduced cost to anyone who is in the district and does not automatically qualify for pre-K. So it would help us offset some of those costs. And then for their teacher pay portion of this bill, it would be for only teachers with 3 to 4 years of experience would receive $2,500 and $5,500 for those with 5 or more years of experience. So anyone with 0 to 2 years of experience would not receive an increase under the teacher pay bill, nor would any other position in the school districts receive an increase under the proposed bill. And again, it would not increase the basic allotment. So there's that as well.
And this is a question, maybe Tommy can answer it. So $2,500, teachers with 3 to 4 years of experience, on average, like what percent increase would that be over a year for their salary?
While he's calculating that.
I just want to put it in perspective, like.
And what I can tell you that we have 142 teachers that would be in that category.
Roughly a 5% increase, a one-time increase. Yes.
And that's 142.
142 teachers currently.
Out of our.
What's unclear about this bill is it says retention allotment, so we don't know for certain if it's salary or it's a one-time payout by the legislature and then it doesn't reoccur.
Sure sounds like a one-time to me.
Right, and to reiterate what you've shared, we have 3,000 employees in the district. It takes every single person, every bus driver, every cafeteria worker, nurse, counselor, et cetera, and right now, there's not a plan for compensation for anyone outside of the teaching classroom.
Well, and if you go back to the other bill, which you don't have to change the slide, but the interesting thing about that one is that basically there's almost no money here, right? That would help us increase salary or anything like that. But they're going to prohibit us from hiring uncertified teachers in the core curriculum. I don't think anyone wants to hire uncertified teachers, but the truth is that there aren't teachers seeking jobs. So people are leaving the profession. So how can we recruit and retain when there's nothing here to help us do that? All they're doing is hamstringing us even more. How are we going to put someone qualified, somebody in the space to teach a subject? That would be my question. What solution are they offering? And I don't see anything.
No.
Just makes it worse.
And that same provision is not overlaid on anyone accepting educational savings accounts.
True point.
And let's talk about educational savings accounts. So there are two separate bills for this, Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3. The Senate version has already passed the Senate and has been referred to the House Public Education Committee. In summary, it would be approximately $10,000 in an educational savings account for those seeking those funding sources. It can be used for a number of services, and in fact, I believe there's a lot of social media posts about that. You can roll it forward, so if you don't use the entire allotment in that first year, you can roll it forward and combine it in the future with remaining allotments. You can use it for transportation expenses. You can use it for breakfast, lunch, textbooks, computers, dual credit, whatever is needed for the child. It does not constitute taxable income. Private schools may select a nationally normed assessment of their choosing. To my knowledge, I didn't see anything where they had to report those results, and there will be no accountability or rating system for them. And they are not subject to federal or state laws regarding serving all students. Should they elect to serve a student who qualifies as a disability, they would receive an additional $1,500. And I believe there was a provision where the public schools would still be required to support that student as well in some capacity with meetings and diagnosticians and those sorts of things. So those are still in play, and these are all funded by enrollment, as you mentioned earlier, not by attendance. And I'll leave it there. Okay, so looking ahead and how do we proceed into this budget season? We went through it last year, and as we went through last year, we came together with our faculties and staff members across the district. We went campus to campus and met with each and every faculty to get their feedback and their suggestions after hearing the state of funding in Texas public schools. From that, we were able to cut approximately $4 to $5 million through a variety of opportunities. And again, knowing that the leaner we become, the more when there is funding, we can pour into compensation to address the market challenges with the compensation review and study that's going on. But while we did make great effort, that we still have more to go because there is still no more funding. So we need to do our part to dig a little deeper and go a little further in the coming years. So I'll invite Dr. Merrill up.
Yeah, you're not, that is, the previous slide's a one-time cost-saving mechanism. I mean, there's some of those that you can go ongoing, but for the most part, once it's utilized, it's done. You've taken advantage of it. Yes, ma'am.
Can we go back?
Sure.
Okay, the
Got it
next
right.
slide back.
Next slide.
One more.
Yeah, that's our prom, by the way.
Yeah, I love that.
That's the best.
So, Dr. Ybarra was talking about private schools do not have the admission review and dismissal meetings for their students, for any students in special education. So we would provide the ARD meeting to the students that live in Bryan ISD that go to private schools or even homeschooled, I guess. And so our teachers and our staff would do all the work for that child, which, good. You notice I said for the child, which we want.
Absolutely.
And so then that family takes everything that our district does for that child and says, okay, this is what this special education student needs in your private school. Then who oversees the accountability and that that child is actually getting their accommodations and
There is no oversight.
there is no oversight. And then, but if they were in public school, our teachers, I mean, they would want to do it, but they have to do it.
Correct.
And we would stay, we would stay on them. I don't mean that to sound, but the parent has the right to stay on them, the student, their supervisors, we make sure everything is happening for that child. But that doesn't happen.
At the private
Even
school.
though we do all the accommodation work and we do everything, then that child goes back to the to the private school and we just hope for the best. Is that?
Yes, and in alignment with the funding pieces that we've talked about with the basic allotment and what students would receive if they were to opt into the vouchers. What you'll also find is the amount that is allocated for students with disabilities. They get an extra amount with their vouchers, and in many cases, that amount is more than what the public school would receive for that student and the services that they qualify for. So it's a double hit.
And Dr. Warren, is there something also proposed with the bill that parents would be asked to perhaps waive their rights for services for their child's eligibility if the private school didn't offer anything at all and there was not any option for them to receive it?
Are you referring to the private school enrollment? Mm-hmm. Yes. So once a parent chooses to go to private school for all of their educational services, they are in essence waiving the right to FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public education. So that is something that they would have to waive. Right now, as it stands with IDEA B, which is our governing rules and regulations for special education at the federal level, with IDEA B, what we do already provide to students who are in private school or homeschool is that students may opt into services through proportionate share or private nonprofit funds. So we have to already take a portion of our federally funded allocations and designate it to our students who are already attending private school or homeschool if they qualify. So they're already receiving a specific portion of our federal funds to provide, for us to provide potentially walk-in speech or one of the other services that we might designate. And then once those funds are depleted, then that service should end until the next school year when those funds are reallocated out to districts. And then in addition to that, we also do the work towards our child fund obligations, which means if a student lives in our school zone, but they do not come to Bryan ISD, we still have to offer an evaluation for those students. So if they go to private school or homeschool, we can offer a service plan that says this is what it would look like in your school to offer specialized services, but it's not an IEP or an individualized education plan that we would develop. We just offer what's called a service plan, and it's up to that private school to implement that. So we give them the materials, we give them not necessarily the materials, but the guideline of what it would look like to serve that child. But it's up to them to implement it.
So many more questions.
A lot of work on our side.
Right. Well, and
With
we
no
want
funding.
to do that for the child. But we have to also trust that somebody's going to go and implement the individual education placement where they are And a lot of times they're just not equipped for that.
Same thing underfunded that you mentioned.
Correct.
Well, and one of my favorite things on this slide in particular, it says private schools may select a nationally normed reference assessment. After we just got done doing a taper report with assessments created by the state of Texas for Texas public schools, that we literally have no say in whether
Correct,
these are
and
great
it's May
assessments or not.
select.
Yeah.
Where we're required,
Right.
it's May select, so they don't even have to.
Right.
And I think that's where that apples to apples argument really comes into play. If this were presented in a way that everyone had to play by the same rules, it would be a completely different conversation. But at this point, the schools are still obligated to portion out their proportionate share. We still have our child fund obligation. We still have to serve any child that walks in our door. But if a child chooses to go to private school or homeschool, we still have all of the regulations that we have to follow, but then it's up to them whether or not they want to implement it. And so it's still the burden on the school district to provide all of that, whether or not they choose to move forward.
With no funding.
With no funding.
For that student, yeah.
And all the legislatures can say all this verbatim, right? Yeah, they're, sorry, that was rude, sorry.
We should probably kind of move along.
We'll go to the other one. So I think it's, Ms. Carabine's asked us to lead by example, so we've taken already kind of a firsthand look at our non-campus staff, and I won't read them to you, but I do think it's important to go through and show that we've been leading by example. So these are non-campus staff that she's asked us to do. We're doing more with less. We're doing it very strategically and surgically, to be completely honest. And so we look at every position to see if there's something internally we could do. If there's a way to make the job, I would say, more streamlined, that's what we're absolutely doing. So again, these are positions that were here at central office that we've either kind of condensed down, we're on hold, we've paused. There's just a whole host of things that we've done to be able to still continue to offer the incredible education that we do, while at the same time making sure the position's just absolutely needed at the same level which it was before. So, again, I don't mean to just push through things, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those on this. Little goes a long way, to be honest. Now, we've mentioned before that we talk with all of our stakeholders, and that's not only our district level folks, but it's also our campuses. We've done the road tour. The CUP is very well known, as I've made mention, and we've asked them for input, and we've gotten some wonderful feedback, not only from last year, but this year. Ms. Carabine goes out to every campus to talk with them individually, the campus and the teachers, and then we've also gone out and done presentations with the staff. And so I think that speaks volumes to doing this with them instead of to them. I think that's critically important, and she's led by example. And so, again, just a remind you, 86% of our local budget is staffing. And so really and truly, when you get right down to it, that's where you're gonna have to eventually make up some of the shortfall. The opportunities to fill vacancies internally, I've already mentioned that. That was the slide previously. That's what we've done. Opportunities to streamline the staffing, review of non-teaching positions through attrition. We've looked at programs and consolidation of those programs. That might be within special education or something else to make sure we're maximizing our programs and our campuses and our staff, that we don't have, if we can make a group of students have one teacher instead of two spread out across campuses, in some cases we've done that. Our resources, again, this was done surgically. When you look at our master scheduling software, our attendance tracking software, data visualization software, SPED, many of those we transitioned to Skyward, and it's allowed under that umbrella to take some of these examples of programs, multiple programs, and allowed us to use one. So in many cases, we've done that. Review of all operating costs and then cost sharing with school nutrition funds as well. So all of this, again, a little bit goes a long way into making up the deficit. Looking ahead, roadshow's about to continue, about to go on. So March DLT, we meet with them tomorrow. And then we've met with them continuously to update them and bring them along the journey. April and May, we have the updated projections based on the legislative progress and decisions. We will continue our stakeholder feedback. We're going to go out and about, continue with our DLT. DLT is district leadership team. That's our principals and directors and those folks. and then obviously our board budget updates. And then in June, ultimately, we will continue with DLT, again, our board budget updates, and then eventually we have to make and adopt the budget. Some of those things we're waiting for the unknowns. That's the hardest thing is as we factor into this is what are we going to receive from the state? Is there not going to be any adjustments? If there's no adjustments, then obviously we're going to have to make drastic adjustments internally to make sure that we don't have a massive budget deficit. Any questions?
We're not, like, we've adopted deficit budgets in the past.
We have.
Right? So that's not new for us. And
Nope.
usually we're able to make that up by
We are.
different cost savings along the way.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any scenario at this point that if we don't get an influx of money from some source outside of us immediately, and by immediately I mean before June,
Yes.
that we are not, we're beyond the point of just tightening our belt and those kind of things. Like, we are going to feel it immediately.
They are going to feel it immediately in the classrooms and in the buildings. In the slide that I showed that I just sort of quickly went through, we're feeling it in this building as well. There's not a building that we own, that we work in, that we are not going to feel it. It is going to be noticeably different. And again, I think almost every district passes a deficit budget at some point and they make it up along the way, right? Those days are gone for everyone. You see drastic reductions across the state, closing. We're not doing these things, so before I say it, I want to be really clear, we haven't done them. Closing of schools, those types of things are things that you see across the state of Texas, and not just one, 10, 20, like you see it across districts, Fort Worth, those places, they just don't have, they're facing the same struggles that we are.
Well, I know, I keep up with school districts around the state, and I know there are already, tough decisions being made about
Absolutely.
programs, right? So, there comes a point where we just don't have money. If 86 or 87% of our budget is tied up in staff and we have to do reductions, it means that we're cutting something that's gonna hurt some people.
Something, graduation, CCMR down the line, the very things that you referenced earlier. Those are what keep kids in school. We find the right place, we get them, and then we graduate them in their position to be productive citizens.
So I say that to say, now is the call to action, folks. If you have been sitting on the sideline just hoping things will be okay, now is not the time to sit on the sideline.
No.
It's important that all of us express our opinions to our elected legislators and let them know our wants and needs. And what I hope that citizens of this community want is a robust and vibrant public school.
Amen.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
That's very helpful, detailed, and I hope, again, that a few folks see this and perhaps the media pick up on some of it, because as Julie just said, we've got to get the word out that this is not okay. All right, don't go too far, Brian. We've got strategic planning update. I'm going to ask you to kind of give us a quick overview. I don't know, we're in the early stages. I'm not sure we need a real lengthy discussion. I know that we want to hear some of the key points, and we want to hear from Mr. Griffin too.
Yeah.
But we still got a long way to go tonight.
We do. We're going to move fairly quickly. We've provided the handouts in the back for you of the full presentation. We've reduced it down to just a few slides. The first meeting was held on March the 20th. Phenomenal meeting, great energy. Could not ask for better representation across the district. I'm incredibly excited. I truly couldn't sleep the night before. I was so excited about the work. That's not hyperbole either. I was so excited to get up. It was like the first day of school, right? You were just making sure everything was done and that everything was checked off, and it met all the expectations. I went home and slept like a baby. But I'm very pleased to have this young man beside me. I've gotten to know, I've told the story, I've gotten to know his children first, and then I got to know his wife, and then I got to know him. And his family's incredible. There's a long history in Bryan, but I'm very excited to get to work with him for the last few months. And he's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing, the great work. And so this was the meeting agenda. Again, the slide deck is back there, and it's longer, but this is just an abbreviated version.
And I think I attached it in an email to all of you on Friday, the entire presentation from the first meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Obviously, we started with our board, so there's your picture. And Mr. Stasny, you addressed the group, which I appreciate very much. We have over nearly 90 citizens or more, depending on the day, and they're made up of all different groups of kids, students. parents, administrators, teachers, community leaders, residents. It's just, again, a broad representation of our entire community, which we're incredibly proud of, bringing varying perspectives from our community. We have three or four students on there. It's fun to get their perspective as well. So we're very excited about that. Purpose, charge, and promise. Again, just a few bullet points on what we did. This was actually 3 slides, but you'll see some of the things that we discussed. The work that you've given them to do, we want to be responsible for that to make sure that we honor the work that you've established for them and that we do that well. And so you'll see a couple of our guiding principles: prioritize student needs, develop a fiscally responsible plan, work with the big picture, be ambassadors for the district, broader community, and we're going to have a lot of fun. There was a lot of laughter in the room and a great amount of energy, to be honest. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Griffin.
So really, we discussed where a master plan comes from, and it starts from our facility assessments, which are always ongoing. We all have some idea of what that is as far as your home, your car, your appliances, but it's a much bigger scale. Obviously, we're the largest business in most all communities. Public education is the biggest hire. We have the most buildings. We have 32 buildings in Bryan ISD. So with that, we track life cycles, we track the equipment, we track the building envelope. We're looking at all the things that really make up the consistency of our buildings and what state they're in. With those, we build those into what's called a master plan. The master plan is really just a long range, 10 to 15 years. It's based off of everything from projected student growth, which there's a lot of discussion about that, but there's also just what we see is happening between now and 15 years from now. It's a crystal ball. Of course, we're also dealing with our maintenance needs, the shortfall. Y'all been talking about that for the last 30, 45 minutes. M&O, what happens when you run out of money? Well, you better get some chewing gum and baling wire together, because that's how you hold stuff together. Our staff does an amazing job. And I want to tell you, since I've been here in the last 2 months, the amount of what I've seen, what they're doing with what they have is amazing. So we need to be very proud of the staff that we have. But that creates the shortfall from the M&O side. And so now you've deferred maintenance. And so that's even a bigger issue. So we have to consider, how are we going to fund that? We have to keep the envelope, the environment, and the safety of our students. And all of that comes together. But the facility is just really one portion of that. What we talked about, the facility assessments, the first part, collecting assets, where we are now, trying to put it together using the folks and the people that are in that room, but also engineers, architects, HVAC people. You see the word MEPT, that's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and technology. These are things that all go in as part of how we've got to put this together, but we're all going to be looking at the same amount of money and the same things. The one thing I strive for and the one thing I seriously push is sustainability. If we're not putting our money and our efforts into sustainable construction, then we're just spending more money on it. And as some of you have already heard me say, pretty is not always best. Something that's going to last for 30 years. Earlier in the presentation tonight, I heard about Crockett. Guys, I walked through Crockett. Crockett's 75 years old. That school looks amazing. Welcome to staff working their tails off to make that building look amazing. So we've got to learn to do more with less, make our dollar stretch further, and then make sure we have something that follows through. And lastly, let's just recap how you conceptualize, explore, develop, and refine. But all of that is building to how we're going to come up with money for the next phase after our master plan.
Mr. Griffin, I know I've said this about 1 million times, but I am very excited to have you working with us. I love everything you say, and I'm just absolutely thrilled to have you. Thank you.
Dog that doesn't learn a lot of new tricks.
Yeah, he has and we've shared this, his background is all over the place, and he's done every side of this type of work, and we're really appreciative. Kids in the district, lives in the district, great oversight, truthfully, watching everything, making sure that our needs and our wants are represented at the table in all ways. And it's been wonderful just to walk with him, to see his eye on things, and to watch him talk to contractors, and just to really have our back wherever he goes. So it's, again, a real gift to have him in the district.
I've been trying to convince him that I have an internship to work with him, but he hasn't fallen for it yet.
That's funny.
Well, I'm just going to second that real quickly. My experience with you has been, it's like a breath of fresh air in many respects, and I'm just thrilled you're on our team. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. We moved into School Finance 101 very quickly in just a couple slides. Not anything that you haven't seen and that we don't need to walk through, but these are obviously the ways that we receive funding. We talked just very briefly about that. And then we quickly moved into School Finance 101, a little bit of the M&O that he already mentioned, maintenance and operations and interest and sinking, which has been vastly confusing by the governor. He loves to take this amount and throw it up without clear explanation and confuse everyone. If I'm honest, I'm going to move quickly through it, but he loves to take those and act like that's just money that we can use wherever we want and however we want. It's just available. We can spend it on salaries and anything else. Obviously not the case. Not the case at all. And then we talked about next steps, wonderful graduation picture. Again, that is our outcome. And then we talked about the upcoming meetings. Again, wonderful. It was just a wonderful representation. It was fun to watch everybody mill around, enjoy. We had to quieten everybody down to get started, and then we had to kick them out. It was, we needed Lester to turn the lights off and kick everybody out like he does the ball games. He was here earlier. He's gone home for the day, but you know how he does that for sure. So that's it. Any questions on strategic planning? We're going to bring updates periodically, not only into the committee meetings, but also into the boardroom.
Thank you very much. And yeah, it's not, again, it's very preliminary at this point. We're just trying to lay all the groundwork down and not certainly nothing that would be in the nature of decision-making at this point. So, but certainly, y'all ask, anybody who wasn't there, ask all the questions you want and review the materials that were presented. But it was very, very positive. Well, I'm going to move on to public comments. My understanding is we don't have any. I will just quickly say that in the future, if somebody wants to make comments about either an agenda or non-agenda item, that you may do so, limited to 3 minutes. Comments about specific student or personnel will be heard in closed session. So with no public comments, we will move to consent agenda. And I'll remind the board that any item can be removed from the consent agenda for discussion or a separate motion.
Mr. Stasny, I move approval of all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Gonzalez and seconded by Ms. Benford. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? It was unanimous. And that takes us to action items. 10A, discuss and consider innovative course offering for principles of community service. And Dr. Christina Richardson has stuck around to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully I have 2 very easy requests for you. I was working with Rudder on some things at their campus, and I started digging for some solutions. And, one of the goals of Bryan ISD is to give our students more opportunity for community service. We had the amazing event with Habitat for Humanity in the last few years, and we want to keep that going. And so finding a way for our students to get credit for that community service, as well as an experience where they're learning more about what is in our community, what services are there that we offer, how can students get involved, and giving them a chance to do some projects of their own. And so there are 2 courses. The first one is Principles of Community Services, and it is a CTE weighted funding course. So it's a little bit higher weight than a normal course would be. And it is a state elective credit. The reason I have to bring it to the board is because it is on the innovative course list. So it does have TEKS to it. It has been approved by the state. They get state elective credit that counts towards graduation. But based on board policy as well as administrative code, it has to be approved by you guys. Any questions for me?
I have a quick question that's kind of tied to this. So when you say that we've got, it's an innovative course, what makes an innovative? Is there a list? Is there a list of innovative courses?
There is. There's a TEA, state approved innovative course list. We offer several courses that are on that list. any given time. And basically, these are courses that either entities such as, there's one called PALS, Peer Assistance Leadership, that is a nonprofit organization that has written the curriculum for a course and gotten it approved, or districts can actually write their own courses and go through the processing through with TEA and get them approved that way as well. They're on the innovative course list for so many years, and then they have to be renewed.
Okay. I know Ms. Waller and I went to one of our conventions, and they had like life skills kind of classes. Is there anything like that offered here? Is that a totally separate?
So for these two, that would be a separate thing to look at.
Separate class. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Do they? I guess I'm
Yeah.
just asking a general question. In your innovative classes, do we have any offerings that would be like a life skills kind of class, or is that?
When you say life skills,
Ms. Waller, the one that we looked at, I mean, they did everything from checking account, doing your checking account. Did you say changing your tires? I mean, the whole.
Not life skills, like
special
special ed life
education.
skills.
that's what I was trying, like, tell me exactly what you're looking.
Right. life
So, yeah, there are a number of them on there. It just depends. I mean,
So we just need to ask you.
yeah, you have to dig into each course and look at the course
Okay.
description and look at the TEKS for each course. There are courses like that, which we have offered in the past, but either they didn't make or we have found something as a better alternative to offer instead.
You know, the greatest course ever like that was called homemaking.
I started to say that.
I say bring it back. Bring it back.
But Christina, the reason you're here today is because these are innovative courses that require board approval for us to be able to offer them.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this one, if you think about what we've done with student ambassadors, there are other service organizations as well.
Yeah.
This is almost written for that. These kids are volunteering hundreds of hours every year, so this could be an elective where they get a credit that would satisfy graduation.
Yes,
So it's,
absolutely.
we feel like it's.
There's lots of different organizations
Yes.
with students involved in it who could
Yes.
take advantage and get some state credit for all of that work that they're putting out.
Since I sidetracked us, I'd like to move approval of the innovative course offerings for principles of community service as presented.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez made the motion, and I heard 2 seconds, but I'll go with Felicia as a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Didn't hear any, so I'll consider that unanimous. And you've got one more. Looks like the next,
Yeah.
after you
This
take
is,
that,
this
you
is
can
the
take
second
next
course
one.
in the series.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
It builds on that first one, so that initially they're learning about community agencies. This helps them dive a little bit deeper into the needs of the community and working more with the agencies.
And this one's also weighted.
It is. They are both CTE weighted, and they are also part of one of our CTE pathways that we already have established.
I move approval of the innovative course offering for community service as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Dr. Harlan, seconded by Mr. Bryan. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? I got one quick question, and it sounds like this would be something that is not just, okay, we're learning to be a good person, but you could actually perhaps learn skills or get a good handle on how you might work for a nonprofit or something like that.
Yes,
Would that-
and that is the career pathway that it's built into for those who are interested in pursuing working for a nonprofit or potentially social work.
Yeah, okay. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Looks like it's unanimous again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and then next we have number 10C, discuss and consider authorizing superintendent to negotiate and enter into a contract with ESS South Central LLC for the provision of substitute staffing services for 25-26 school year.
Good evening. So like Mr. Stasny said, we're here to ask for approval for Mrs. Carabine to enter in our contract with ESS. I will tell you firsthand, it's a valuable partnership that I hope you consider us continuing as an end user.
I'm going to interrupt just real quick again, just to maybe, not to cut you off, but to say that you did, I think, it was the Finance Committee that y'all presented at, and we were very impressed with all the information we received and reminded that unlike when it first came into our district, they have really been doing a good job. So I just want to pass that along, that we did, as a committee here, the very positive things that are going on. You can go ahead and continue.
I was just going to mention that as an end user, I know I shared this in the Finance Committee, but as an end user, as a campus principal, This is a very valuable service. They are able to hustle at the last minute and all the bells and whistles that they bring with it. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela Behrens, Assistant Director of HR, and she's going to talk about some of those things, positive things with ESS.
So we've been partners with ESS since 2019, and in that time, since 2020, we've had the same team on board. We've got 2 full-time employees that are dedicated solely to Bryan ISD, to hiring, recruiting, onboarding, and filling those daily vacancies. And these 2 ladies do an amazing job with that. In addition to that, ESS has district-specific onboarding training that they do to help make sure our subs are very well prepared for us. And they listen to our feedback. And so, we implemented Stop the Bleed training this year. ESS got on board, and they're training all of our subs with Stop the Bleed as they're onboarded. In addition to that, we specifically asked ESS for some training so that our substitutes were more well prepared to work in a special education classroom. ESS hired a former special education teacher, developed a training, and they started doing it with our substitutes so that our subs were ready to really go into those special education classrooms and do well. And that has actually proven to be so good that ESS has done that nationwide now. And so something that we started in Bryan as a suggestion, they've taken nationwide for substitute training. So I think that really speaks to this partnership and that they listen to what we need and they're, working with that. They really have, and their orientations too are nights and weekends and during the workday. They really think outside the box on that so that they make it as easy as possible for us to get as many new subs into the district as possible. They have an after-hours call center. So if a teacher puts out at 8 o'clock at night that they're going to be out sick the next day, they're working on their call center to get subs to secure for the next morning. And then in addition to that, they offer low-cost benefits to their employees. Health, dental, vision, 401k, all of the things that we couldn't provide. They were part-time employees for us, but they're offering that to their employees now. And so that's very helpful to especially our subs who need those things. And then they offer benefits that we can't, like incentive benefits that we can't offer. We can't do gift cards and raffles and drawings and all kinds of things to incentivize subs to work on, harder to fill days. Those Fridays during, the sports seasons when we have sports all across the district, or days when we have big trainings and stuff, they can offer a raffle or gift cards or things like that to get their subs to come in and fill our classrooms. And then I'd like to draw your attention to this photo. This is our account manager, Kathy Alvarez, and she's with Talia Proctor. And Ms. Proctor was the 2024 ESS Sub of the Year. She was nominated by the campuses that she worked on, and she is now a full-time employee at Ross Elementary as an instructional assistant. So I think this goes to the next slide, and it's actually my last bullet on this slide, but it's a good segue. Since 2019, we've hired over 206 subs from ESS as full-time employees. They tend to be a really great recruiting tool for us. And I will say that ESS does this with a smile on their face. They are always, happy and supportive when we hire one of their subs that they've recruited for us, which speaks to the dedication of, how much they understand that it's good for the students. It's a great on-the-job interview. Our subs work in our classrooms. The principals recognize what a great job they're doing, and then they hire them for a full-time job. And so ESS has been a really good tool for us. Since 2019, they have filled to date over 99,000 absences, 99,000, vacancies, which is pretty amazing to me. And then as of this year, they have filled over 14,550 absences. And then here's the thing I want to brag on most tonight. As of today, we have 482 active subs in our district. Those are active. They're not the people that are not working. Those are active subs. To give you an idea of how big this number is, before ESS took over 2018-2019, we had less than half of that number in our sub pool. This is the largest sub pool we have ever had. And the reason why we need such a large sub pool is that, subs make their own schedules. Sometimes they work 1 day a week. Sometimes they work 5 days a week. But we need a lot of subs to fill all those vacancies. And I want to brag on ESS for a moment. Last Monday, we had a 99% fill rate in our district. And today, this morning, we had a 97% fill rate. And that is a testimony to 482 active subs. So ESS has done a really, really, really good job, and they're working really hard to make sure that we maintain a good, high active sub pool. And then in addition to that, we have 16 preferred subs in our district. These are highly qualified subs with bachelor's degrees, and their sole job, they make a little bit more than a daily rate, and their sole job is to go wherever Kathy Alvarez tells them to go each day. So they do those last minute absences. We don't put them in long-term vacancies. We don't put them in advance absences that we know about, because those can be filled by other subs. But day of absences are really hard to fill. So if a teacher's child gets sick in the car in the morning, that absence is really difficult to fill. So these 16 people are on call every day waiting for Kathy to tell them where to go. So that's a pretty amazing thing too. And then let's talk a little bit about the trends. So in 1920, that was our COVID year, and so it was cut short. So we really don't have a good picture of what absence fills would have been that year. But you can see that 21-22, we had a pretty big year for absences. And we would expect that in a pandemic. And then we've started to trend back to where we would like to see. 23-24 was much better, and we're on par with that with 24-25. And so now I'm going to pass the baton over to Kevin to talk about the financial side.
And Kevin, again, I may get shouted down by the rest of the board, but I think mostly what we want to know is do you see it overall a negative? I mean, are we having to spend a lot of extra money to do this over what we used to do, which was to have our own staff do it? Or overall, what do you see as the likely impact of this?
Yes, sir. I think as we continue to work through the numbers, at one point this came out and it cost roughly when we were tracking, it was about $100,000 additional funding to utilize this company. And through the years, now they've picked up some other things. They've picked up Red Rover, which is the absence reporting software that ties into Skyward. Ms. Behrens mentioned the hiring and recruiting. We hire people from them. They're more of a placement agency almost for us. And then the cost reduction. Since that beginning, we started, the markup was 1.32 in 2019-20. At one point, we asked them to go down to 1.29 to help us with those costs, and they did. That dropped us to about a $60,000 difference. And then last year, when we were, struggling with the budget, we asked them again to go down to 1.25, and they said they didn't feel like they could do that, but they went down to 1.27, so they reduced the cost even further. And then, of course, they cover all of the things for the employees, as you mentioned, the benefits and the other things that they could do. If we looked at it from our standpoint, if we felt like we had to take it over on our own and then go and cover those benefits and those things, it would probably increase roughly 10% is what we estimate. So that would make it, that would flip it probably to a $50,000 to $100,000 cost on our part, additional cost if we went that route. And you heard from Mr. Roberts about being on a campus and what a benefit that was to be able to have those people working on that, filling those jobs, and it's just the efficiency and the effectiveness.
It's pretty obvious that the benefit is real, and so everybody's, or at least normally wants to hear the price tag too, so it does sound to me, and again, if anybody wants to ask some more, to get some more specifics on this, but again, since we had the advantage of the committee meeting, it sounds like it's not like, well, this is costing us a bunch of money to do it, and considering how efficient they're working and how effective they are, it sounds like it's money well spent.
Yes, sir. It would be a recommendation of the administration to go ahead with this, because it does, with all the different changes and the other things that we're talking about with the budget for the campuses, it really helps them to be stable and have as many classrooms filled as we can, which makes it much easier for them to function on a day-to-day basis.
So anybody want more details on that?
No, if not, I'll make a motion. Mr. Stasny, I move to authorize the superintendent to negotiate and enter into a contract with ESS South Central LLC for the provision of substitute staffing service for the 2025-2026 school year.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gonzalez and seconded by David Stennis. Any further discussion?
I think that ESS is a real benefit to us, but it sounds like we're a benefit to them too. I bet you that they use our district to help build their potential as a company and use some of the things that they're learning here. So it sounds like it's a really good partnership.
It really is. They are very receptive, and we have been a reference for them as well when they've had other districts. But it has been a very good partnership, and this team that we have is amazing, and then their leadership is great too. I just have to pick up the phone and call them, and they respond immediately. So it's a really good partnership.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I certainly remember when we didn't have any, or very too few subs show up, and I don't know how in the world we managed those classrooms, but I don't think much learning was taking place. So, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? I don't hear anything. Okay, that sounds unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, what else? I think we're ready for
I'd like to make a
session.
motion. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, did I skip one? Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Board policy. Did anybody care about board policy? I guess we will hear from Dr. Ibarra again. Sorry.
I feel the enthusiasm for the presentation. I feel very good about it.
It's not you.
Already hearing from you.
All right, so this is actually a very, very quick policy update. The Texas Association of School Boards has a numbered update. This is numbered update 124. It is mostly legal policy, although there are a few local policies. But what you'll find as we went through our process of making sure we all took a look at it to see if there were any implications to practice, there really isn't any in this particular policy update. In fact, most of it is terminology that has been clarified or adjusted or restructured, so much so that I really didn't even have a great highlight to give you on each section of board policy.
After-school snacks wasn't a...
Yeah, so the big moment there for legal policy under COB was moving the terminology from meal supplements to after-school snacks. So again, when I say this update was pretty thin, it was incredibly so. As you skip through and you kind of look over the highlights, again, you see more clarifications. In Section D, and this will parallel in Section G, which is community, they added additional provisions and clarifications regarding e-cigarettes and that they do not need to contain nicotine to be prohibited. We already prohibit them. This just clarifies that it doesn't matter if they have nicotine or they don't have nicotine, they're still prohibited. So again, clarifying language there, same thing with legal policy. When you get over to instruction, it references the dyslexia handbook, which it already did, it just changed the wording around. It, again, updated some more things with funding, didn't change the funding, but just clarified the gifted and talented funding allotment, which is also an underfunded allotment, going back to what we talked about earlier. Under students, you'll again clarifying language reporting to CPS should the need be there. You must give your name. We already do all of these things, but the identity of the reporter is in fact private until it's necessary to disclose it in accordance with law. Just clarifies that. It's already in place. No big change there. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Section G just updates the electronic vaping. Again, it does not need to have nicotine. It is still prohibited. Whether it has it or doesn't, it's not permissible on school property. And that is really the extent of this entire policy update, terminology, structure, and some reconfiguration of words.
Well, we really appreciate you evaluating it and whoever else was involved because that really helps us since we want to focus on what really matters, and if it's just a cleanup, we certainly trust you, at least I do, I think everybody does, that you're going to tell us if there's anything major, so.
Thank you, sir.
Having said that, entertain a motion.
Mr. Stasny, I move approval of the updates to board policy as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Stennis and seconded by Ms. Bedford. Any further discussion, questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? None, so it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Barbara.
you.
We'll try to have a quick closed session, Barbara, to make up for that. Thank you. Of course, I'm usually the one yapping.
All right, now we are going to Convene in closed session, discuss following items. I assume we do have some things we still need to talk about.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, convene in closed session, discuss following items allowed by Texas Government Code, Chapter 551074. We've got three items, employment evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, dismissal of a public officer or employee, discussion of public school student where personally identifiable information will be necessarily revealed, and possibly consultation with attorney to discuss legal requirements and financial terms of the jet tax incentive program. We are now going into closed session. Voting Board reconvened in open session at 9:47. No action was taken in closed session. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:47 and a half.
Good job, sir.